tutorial. My name is Lauren Kimball, and we are going to start working on Project 1 for ANI 150, the Sci-Fi crate. Now on Canvas, I provided these concept sketches that I pulled from the internet of Sci-Fi crates, and your task is to model and texture one based on the reference. Now ideally, if you're working on a project, you would want to have different orthographic views, the top view, the side view, the front view, etc. But unfortunately, you're just going to have one of these pictures to work with. For my demo, I'm going to go ahead and model this one down here. I went ahead and cropped the picture, isolated it, it's ready to go. And I'm going to go ahead and open up Maya, which I probably should have done before I started recording. Alright, so once Maya is open, close out of some of these pop-up windows if it allows me. I suppose I could just edit that later. Alright, first thing to do is we're going to go in and set our project. We're going to go to Project Window, New. I already have a Sci-Fi crate on the desktop, so I'm going to create this one and call it Sci-Fi Crate 2, because this is my second version. And I'm going to go ahead and set it to my desktop and select. And the presets are fine. Go ahead and accept it. Alright, now I think I had already mentioned that it's ideal that we had orthographic views, front, side, top view, but we don't have those things. We only have this one image to go off of, so we have to do approximation. The first thing I note is that it is basically a box. So in dealing with a polygon primitive, I can go ahead and create a cube. I can press F on my keyboard to focus in on it, and I'm going to go into the polygon inputs to enter in some information about this crate that I'm looking at. So one of the first observations I make is that the front of this crate is pretty even and symmetrical, so it's whatever the height is about the width. Going back into space, it's a bit longer, so I'm going to guess 2 by 2 by 3, sort of roll with it. So I'll type in 2 by 2 by 3, and there's my crate. All right. So now that I have that base shape, I'm going to examine the picture and note some details. I note that there's about 5 faces here on this front, so I'm going to go find the width. That's not the one I want. I want the depth, evidently. Nope, don't want that. I want height. There we go. I want 5 faces right there for forming this general shape. And for the top, which is going to be the width, I only want 3. Now, for the side, for the depth of the object here, I'm going to hold off on that, and I will explain why shortly. For now, create a box, 2 by 2 by 3, width 2, height 2, depth 3 units, subdivisions 3 for the width, 5 for the height. And we're not going to mess with the depth at this time. Okay, I'm going to right click and select the edges. So if I click on an edge and then hold down Shift and double click, I'm able to grab the entirety of that edge loop. So I'm going to do that again, Shift, double click, and now I've got both edge loops selected. I'm going to go ahead and use my scale tool. So that's the R key, and I'm going to scale this upward. So this is going to be like this middle section right here. All right. I note that down here there's a little bit more surface space before pushing inward. Up here it's kind of more in the middle, probably due to these handles. So I'm going to double click this top edge loop, and I'm going to move it so that it's about halfway in the center, roughly, maybe a little lower there. Down here, I'm not really going to mess with it much. Alright? Now, I could just grab these edges, but I think I'll just grab the faces instead. So I'm going to grab the center faces. If I press 4, I can see that I only have 8 faces selected, And it says 8 faces right up here in my poly count menu. The poly count menu can be accessed by going to Display, Heads Up Display, Poly Count menu. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and grab my scale tool again, only this time instead of grabbing the center, I'm going to grab this little green box in between the blue and the red. Now the red controls the x-axis, so I would be able to squeeze this in. The blue is going to control the z-axis, which would squeeze it down the other direction. If I grab this little green box, it's going to simultaneously pull the two together, and it's going to create this kind of effect here. I don't necessarily need to bring in the y-axis, so I want there to be a little bit of depth to my box. Yeah. I might squeeze it just a smidge more on this axis. Yeah, I like that. That seems to be working. Okay. So that's the start of the shape. Now if we look at the top, we notice that it's kind of hollow here. We're not worried about these three kind of perpendicular shapes that are intersecting the box. We're worried about the box itself, all right? So we've got this nice piece down here and this upper piece right here, but one of the things I notice is there's this indentation. Another thing is there's what appears to be kind of a lip around the box. So I'm going to go ahead and first insert an edge loop tool. So go ahead and select the object. You can go into selection mode by pressing F8 and then shift right click, insert edge loop. And I'm going to go ahead and add an edge loop to that mesh. Why? I want there to be a little bit of depth to this lid. It doesn't really show it very well on the concept art, but just because the handle is obscuring it, but I feel like there needs to be a little bit of lid there and not just a flat plane, if that makes sense. It'll probably make more sense the further on we get. I'm then going to press spacebar and I'm going to go to my front view. And in my front view, I'm going to marquee select, oh, I got to go to face mode. Marquee select those three faces. So if I go up here into face mode or look at the faces in my poly count, I see that I've grabbed 3 faces and I'm going to go ahead and delete them. So if I go back to my perspective view, remember you can toggle camera views by selecting the space bar, tapping it. And whichever camera view that your mouse is hovering over when you press space bar again is the one viewport that's going to take up your screen. Alright, so as you can see, I deleted the front and back face and the top face. I'm going to go back to my front view, right click, grab these vertices. So see how this is just 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a polygon still. It's all 4 sides, but it's slanted. I'm going to recreate that by using my scale tool and clicking on the yellow box and pushing this out. Okay? See that? All right, cool. Now you're probably wondering, and if you haven't used the bridge tool before, how are we going to fill this ginormous hole? I'm going to go into edge mode and go back into my front view. And I'm going to use my marquee tool to shift select this move tool is getting in my way. So I'm going to press Q. Q is going to go from my move tool to my select tool. All right. And so going back into this, I'm going to first make sure my vertices are lined up. I kind of messed up playing with the scale tool, so undo, so these are all nice and lined up again. I'm going to right click, select edges, select these top edges, and select this bottom edge, and it'll allow me to select both the ones on the front and the back side of this crate. Okay? Then I'm going to shift right click, and remember, when you shift right click, it opens up this convenient shortcut menu, which is basically all the tools that are applicable to whatever thing you're working on presently in Maya, so shift right click. And I'm going to go down to a tool called Bridge. Click on the little box. I'm going to make sure the settings are reset, the default settings are fine, and I'm going to press Bridge. And when I do that, I have this really nice these faces that are nice and filled in. Okay? Alright. So another thing to notice is the more we extrude and kind of manipulate our polygons, it really screws with the surface normals. So you'll see that there's this weird gray gradient, and that has to do with, again, the surface normals. So it doesn't mean anything's wrong with your geometry, but if you are anything like me and you find that that's profoundly distracting, then all you have to do is select your mesh, press spacebar, go to Mesh Display, and soften harden edges, or you can just click harden edge. And it will change your surface normals. It looks a little bit more geometric because I hardened the edges. If you were to press spacebar and you were to soften the edge, it would have a much different, far different outcome. Good. The middle ground is the soft hardened edges box, which kind of allows you to pick the degree if you were to go into the properties box. But these tools here, harden edge, soften harden edges, are gonna fix that weird gradient effect. Okay, so we've got the basic shape ready to go, and now we've got to worry about these three perpendicular shapes. Now, instantly, what I would be tempted to go to would be to, well, first, before I step any further, let's go ahead and save our scene. File, save as, and I'm going to just call this crate 001 base, because I'm just modeling the base. Alright, so if I were to just approach this without without any other idea of how I was going to go about this, my first instinct would be to use the Insert Edge Loop tool to create these kind of strange perpendicular fringes that are sort of sticking out of the box. So I'm going to go into my side view and show you why that's not going to work. See, these pieces are jetting out of the crate perpendicularly. So it's like if they're not curving with the crate, they are, well, I mean, this part is, but I mean, as far as the actual shape itself, it's coming straight off the crate. If I were to insert an edge loop tool, notice that the edge loop is not creating a straight line, it's bending inward. And that's because this plane right here, I've scaled this plane inward. And as a result, it has altered the face, the geometry of the face. And I can no longer get perfect straight lines by using the edge loop tool. So you're probably wondering what we should do about that. Well, there's a few things. First, what I'm going to do is a little bit complicated, and I don't want to have to repeat it a million times. So one of my very favorite techniques when I'm modeling something symmetrical is to just chop it in half and use mirroring to duplicate the desired outcome on one side so I don't have to do it twice. So in order to prepare a mesh for mirroring, what we need to do is, well, right now this mesh is sitting perfectly on the intersection of this grid, and that's ideal because that means we can mirror the geometry on the grid and it will make a perfect mirror. But before we do that, we need to chop this in half. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the geometry, I'm going to shift right click and insert edge loop tool. In the tool settings, I'm going to go to multiple edge loops. Now, we talked about this in class, but what this tool does is it activates something called the use equal multiplier, and it will create however number of edge loops you enter into the box, it's going to lay them out perfectly distanced from each other. So it's not going to like favor one side or the other. No matter where you click, I can click far off to this corner and it's still going to always show up in the middle. Now, a cool shortcut with this trick is you can use it for a single loop instead of multiple loops. And in doing that, you create a perfect cut into the geometry, like so, that is going to make it really easy to chop in half. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go into face mode, and I'm going to go into the front view, and I'm going to select the faces on one side. I'm going to go double check with my side view. See how it's all lit up orange? That's because I've selected the side that is facing the side view camera. So I definitely want to go back in and select the other side of the mesh so that I won't lose my side view. And I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Okay? And I'm going to go ahead, every time I make a significant change to my mesh, I like to save a new iteration. So I'm going to go 002 underscore chop. All right. And I could go ahead with the technique I'm about to do and start breaking this into thirds. But I like to save as much time as possible. And if you look at this, the front is the same as the back. The side is the same as its opposing side. Now, the other side of the crate, since these are hinges right here, probably has a clasp of some sort, but otherwise the geometry is identical. With that in mind, we can go ahead and chop this into a fourth so that we model 1/4 of this crate, then duplicate it over. And then that saves a ton of time. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go into object mode. Going to shift right click, insert edge loop tool, and I'm going to click and it will cut my mesh in half. I'm then going to go ahead and grab the faces on this side, and again checking my my camera because I don't want to cut off the side that's facing the camera. So I want to grab this back part and delete. So now I still see my side view and I still see my back view. And that's the way I'd want it. All right, and I will go ahead and just press save. And in the next tutorial, we are going to go from this fourth of a shape into kind of forming the rest of the details on our box.